What is up, YouTube? We are back again with the next in my build out series. This time we're going to go through and go ahead and clean the equipment. Now, when I talked to you before, I let you know that I was going to take you through this step by step. And since most people I know are buying tanks used and you get them in various shape, I thought I'd show you how I clean up a tank. And as I mentioned before, if you got a new tank, you can definitely want to wipe it down with something like vinegar and water to get any residue out, things like that. But for the most part, I'm going to focus on some heavy duty cleaning of hard water stains. I'll show you some tricks on how to let get some really hard water stains out. And in general, we're going to get this tank all cleaned up. Now, in the last video, I talked to you about gravel that was in the tank, and I mentioned that sometimes you get a tank with gravel in the bottom. For the most part, I recommend you throw that out. In my case, it was my gravel in my tank, and it was aragonite from my sump. So I decided to put that back into my sump in an extra chamber and expand my refugium, so on my saltwater tank. So general recommendation though is it's really cheap. Why mess with it? You don't know the history of the tank, if it had copper, if it was treated with copper, anything like that. So get rid of it. Don't worry about the gravel. It's the least expensive part of the whole thing, and you know, better safe than sorry. So let me go ahead and tell you how I'm going to clean this tank. We're going to go ahead and use a 50-50 mix of vinegar and water. I like it a little bit on the strong side to help get rid of some of the hard water stains. And what I generally do is I start with a general cleaning. As you can see, I've got a spray bottle over here, right there. It's one of those pressurized spray bottles that you can get at Home Depot or any other home improvement store. I like that because it allows me to spray continuously. Alright, so first things first, I'm going to take this tank, lay it on its side, and start wiping it out. Let's see what we get so far. Okay, so I've started cleaning the tank, and what I like to do, especially with smaller tanks, obviously you're not going to be able to do this with bigger tanks, is I like to stand them on their sides very carefully, obviously. My work table is a little cushioned with the wood underneath, so I don't recommend you do this on concrete or anything. You might scratch the glass, but if you be careful, lay down a towel, something like that, it can help. Anyway, so what I like to do is I generally like to just take the spray bottle and do a light misting and let it sit for about 3 to 5 minutes just to help loosen up whatever's on there, and then give it a good cleaning. And I like to do that for all 4 sides. As I said, just give it a light misting. You can see I'm not putting too much on there at once because you're going to have to wipe it up, but just give it a light misting and let it wait for a couple of minutes, help loosen up what needs to be removed, and then we'll wipe it down with some paper towels. What you want to do right now is probably just give it a general cleaning. You're not going to get it perfect the first time around, but it's going to help you see some of those more stubborn stains. And as soon as I finish cleaning these, you can see I've done one panel already. You can take a look at that. That's nice and clear. And then we can see the other panel over here used to look like that. So did a good job. And then I cleaned the outside as well. So that'll help, and then we'll get to the... Okay, so next I want to talk to you about really hard scale buildup, line buildup from hard water stains or salt. I had the exact same problem on my 150 when I got it. If you recall, I got that used. And so what I had to do, and I certainly learned this from somewhere, is spraying it with vinegar is not really going to help that much. Letting it sit it's not going to sit long enough. It'll evaporate. So what you want to do is you want to get something like some paper towels, like I have here, and you want to lay them over the stain, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to actually take your vinegar and water mixture, and instead of spraying it on the glass, you're going to go ahead and spray and really saturate that, a lot more than I'm doing here, but you're going to spray and saturate that paper towel, and you're going to let it sit overnight. And you know, even after a couple of hours, let's say an hour or two, you could probably come back depending on how bad the stain is, and you'll see a dramatic difference. Also, it'll be very loose, so if you want, you can very carefully, and I do want to stress very carefully, scrape it a little bit lightly with a razor blade. Just be really careful with a razor blade because you can scratch the glass with that. So obviously on a small tank it works great. You've got it laying down. You can saturate this with vinegar and water and let it soak for a little bit, and it'll help lift up some of those stains. You can always come back and do it again and again for those more stubborn stains. For my 150 and obviously tanks that are bigger than this that you can't lay on its side pretty easily, what I actually did was I actually saturated this in vinegar, and then I used saran wrap to wrap it all up. The saran wrap actually sticks to the glass really well, and it helps hold the paper towel in place to get rid of those hard water stains. All right, so after a little hard work, or a lot of hard work, depending on how bad your tank is, you can see that we've gotten the glass all nice and clean. The benefit of using vinegar and water is I don't have to go back and wipe it down with anything to clear it out. Vinegar is not going to cause you any problems. If you left some excess in your aquarium and filled it up with water, it still wouldn't be that big of a deal. If you poured a whole gallon in, yeah, you got a problem. Don't do that. But for the most part, wiping it down with vinegar is the safest and best way to keep everything safe for your fish. Now, onward to the equipment. So for the equipment, we're going to go ahead and do something that is somewhat easier. All you need is a nice little 5-gallon bucket. Fill it up about halfway with water, and we're going to use about 2 cups of vinegar in there, and we're going to take the equipment in there, the hang-on back filter, basically everything that's got anything on it, right? The heater, anything that goes in the water, and we're going to go ahead and soak it in that vinegar mixture, and that's going to help loosen up that scale so that we can take it off. And for lighter coated things, it'll actually just be clean when you take it out, which is great. We're going to go ahead and put those things in there. We're going to let them sit overnight. We're not in a rush, and we want the vinegar to do all the work so we don't have to. If you're in a rush, you can get a light toothbrush and scrub the stuff off after letting it soak for 15 minutes to a half hour, and it'll come off, and you may have to go back and soak it again to get some of the harder stains off and scale buildup, but you know, you'll get the idea. All right, so let's go ahead and I got about 2 cups in here. This is plain old white distilled vinegar. It's very cheap. You can get it at your local supermarket if you need to, and we're just gonna pour it in the bucket. All right, so a quick word about filters. Now, I said put everything in the bucket, but I wanna make sure everybody knows, especially those of you who are new to aquariums, this is a hang-on back filter, okay? This will sit on the back of your aquarium. This is completely submersible except for the motor here, okay? You do not want to put this whole thing in the water. You're going to have to clean this part manually, and for a hang-on back filter, most hang-on back filters, the motors kind of gently twist slightly and come out, and in there you'll see the impeller and everything else. We're going to clean that by hand. This part right here, it's all plastic. It doesn't matter. If you can take it apart gently, if it's not too crusty, just go ahead and do so. It'll just clean up that much easier. If not, if it's really tight in there like this piece is, soak it as it is, but do not soak the motor. You'll ruin it for sure. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the motor. So you see right here, this is the motor that I pulled off of the hang-on back filter, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take out the one piece in here that's removable, and we want to very gently do that if it's stuck, because you do not want to break these plastic pieces. This is the impeller, and it's on a magnetic shaft, right? This is all one piece. You want to keep it that way. Put this in a safe place and handle it with care, because if you break these, you're effectively ruining the motor. It'll be out of balance. It won't move as much water as it's supposed to, and you'll end up having to get a new one. Okay, so I've got all the pieces laid out, and I've got what I think is the game changer in terms of cleaning this, which is Q-tips. They are definitely your friend. They're going to help us get down into the motor shaft and clean that out, and just in general help us wipe some things up and get into the nooks and crannies. So we're going to go ahead and spray this down a little bit with vinegar and water. Now we want to try to keep it to this area and the shaft and this part over here, which are pretty water resistant. We don't want to get it on the rest of the motor. Just use a damp cloth on that. We don't want to soak anything and get any electronics in there. They're generally sealed, but better safe than sorry. All right, so let's go ahead and gently spray some of this on here. We want to get it in and around as much as possible to clean that out. And then of course don't forget the impeller. We want to spray that as well and just let it sit for a couple of minutes. These parts are usually not too bad, but if they can be, you follow the same general recommendation. Let it soak in, and then once you're done letting it soak in for a couple of minutes, clean it, soak it some more, clean it. Eventually it will all come off. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the impeller. Again, be really, really careful with this. We don't want to break this. And what I like to do is just kind of gently hold it. I try not to grab the plastic part too much, and just hold it at the base here and just kind of gently wipe away that magnet. You want to keep it as smooth as possible, get all the detritus off. It'll just make it spin more efficiently, and you know, the gallons per hour is what you want to keep in mind. And you can see it's kind of dirty, but not too bad. This doesn't get mucked up. I think most people tend to pull these out and clean them probably once or twice a year when it's actually in use. But other than that, unless this is really dirty, I would stay away from cleaning the impeller. You can kind of just gently wipe it down if you want, but then that's really about it. That's clean. So let's put that aside, and we'll talk about the motor next. Now, you know, I sprayed this down and I let it sit for a couple of minutes. So we're going to go ahead and take this Q-tip, and we're going to use that to basically clean this. Now, the part that we're really trying to clean down here is really the shaft. So we want to get in there. You can see the Q-tip goes in quite a ways, and just generally wipe around that area and pull it out as you wipe in a swirling motion, and you're going to get a lot of dirt off. Now this one happens to be really clean, which is great, but you definitely want to make sure you clean these really well. And then you can take the Q-tip and go around the outside as well. As I said, you get the nooks and crannies, and that motor is just generally going to be clean. If you run into some more stains, or they're not coming off very easily, again, just soak it again with the vinegar and then go back and clean it again, and then just generally give it a wipe down with a paper towel. That ought to get it clean enough. These are usually not that dirty because they're outside the tank. So okay, so here's everything we've got that was soaking in the bucket for a couple of hours in that vinegar solution. As you can see, you can tell I haven't even wiped anything away yet. It's still wet, and you can see this is much cleaner than the way it started out. You know, one thing I want to point out that I probably didn't mention earlier is this is a fully submersible heater, so putting it in the vinegar bath is okay, but some of the heaters you might have can't go past a certain limit. You know, hopefully you've got a fully submersible one, because it's a good idea to have one, but they're a little bit better sealed than the old glass ones. But if you have some of the old glass ones, and just in general some of the cheaper ones, you can't get the controls wet in any way. They'll have a water line there. So make sure that you don't dump it in the bucket and expect it to work, unless it's fully submersible. If it's not fully submersible, then tie it off and let it sort of dangle in the bucket a little bit, or just spray it down and wash it by hand like we did the tank. So as you can see, everything came out relatively clean. I'm going to go ahead and wipe it down and put it back together. We've got the heater, we've got the cover for the filter. I'll put the motor back in. We will dry this stuff off and put it together, and then we'll be ready to go ahead and dirt the tank. And that's going to be my my next episode coming up. So I'm going to go through these pretty quick. As you can tell, I'm uploading them as fast as I get a chance to do them. Unfortunately, work seems to be eating up most of my time these days. So I was hoping to get this done this weekend, and here it is almost the next weekend, and I'm finally getting around to it. So hope you guys are enjoying this. Coming up next, we're going to start putting the dirt in the tank.